Some men live lives so legendary that the chronicles of their lives become shrouded in myth and mystery, and King Arthur is no exception to this rule. But who exactly was the historical Arthur? To understand, we must go back to the year 410 AD, where after nearly 4 centuries of occupation, the Roman legions had finally pulled out of Britain. This actually caused a devastating infrastructural collapse, and the once protected Celtic tribes now had to defend themselves against wave after wave of invaders from Saxons, Jutes, and Angles from what is modern-day Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands. It is in this fragmented and chaotic world that we begin to hear tales of a man who rallied the Celtic Roman Britons against these foreign invaders that so threatened their homeland. This man was later presumably named Arthur, or Arturius if we want to be really Latin about it, or perhaps he was named something entirely different. What matters is that this man was a warlord who led the charge in several battles, many of which we are uncertain of, but the one that we can historically connect him to is the Battle of Mount Badon around 500 AD. Our oldest written source of these events comes from a monk named Gildas, who does not record Arthur directly by name, but he does tell of a man who led a British victory so decisive that it halted Saxon expansion for decades. This victory was later attributed to a man named Arthur by later sources. In the 9th century, in the Historia Britonum by Nennius, Arthur finally appears by name, but he is not referred to as a king because obviously at the time there was no kingdom to be had. Instead, he is referred to as Dux Bellorum, meaning leader of battles, in which he fought 12, with Badon being his crowning achievement. In these accounts, we are not told much more about Arthur. We are not sure if he was a ex-Roman officer, if he was a local Celtic chieftain. All we know is that he led the charge against the Saxons, Angles, and Jutes. However, the Annales Cambriae written in the 10th century takes this a step further. They place Arthur at Badon in the year 516 AD, and then at the Battle of Camelot in 537 AD, where he died fighting. This is the first account that mentions Arthur's death, and this is where the myth begins to take off rapidly. Finally, by the 12th century, Geoffrey of Monmouth transforms Arthur into a full-blown king in his Historia Regum Britanniae. He adds Merlin, his wizard advisor, Guinevere, Mordred, and the grandeur of Camelot, his kingdom. And then the French take hold of the story, and they add the Holy Grail, Lancelot, the chivalric code of the knights, and so on. But if we strip away all of the magic and the romanticism, we are left with something perfectly historically plausible. A Celtic Roman warlord who fought to preserve his people during one of the most violent transitions in British history. So where do these more mythic elements arise from, and why? Merlin, for example, may just be an amalgamation of older Celtic druids that were very culturally significant at this period. Merlin may actually also be associated with an historical prophet and bard named Myrddin Wilt, who is such an interesting character he may deserve his own video. Arthur's sword, Excalibur, which was either pulled from a stone or given to him by the Lady of the Lake, is meant to represent a test of divine kingship. This reflects a very ancient Indo-European idea that rulers were not only chosen for their strength or popularity or by lineage, but by the divine right of the gods. In the face of such a chaotic and confusing time for the Celts, with the withdrawal of the Romans and the foreign invaders from overseas, Arthur's castle of Camelot represents a dream for an ordered and unified kingdom of Britain. And finally, the island of Avalon, where Arthur is taken after his death, where he is neither completely dead nor alive, is a popular motif that appears across all ancient cultures. He is the sleeping king who exists outside of time, who is ready to return when Britain needs him most. It is the mythic echo of a people who are unwilling to let their hero die because they know that in order to do so would mean to admit that the age of heroes is over. And ultimately, like many great stories, I believe that mythical elements overlaid with historical truths make for a much richer and more meaningful story anyways. So, was King Arthur a real person? Yeah.